That summary report is designed to go to the politicians or the politicians' staff, or, hey, your local staff that's promoting sustainability, the same thing. It is all based upon those summary reports and their lies. And by the way, the people that are in the middle, they get Nobel Prizes. Al Gore got half of a Nobel Prize. The other half, he split it up into maybe 800,000 pieces, and he gives it to various people. It's all set up perfectly. They gave it to a lady scientist, Susan Solomon, Alabama. I mean, I've read her report. She's crazy, basically. She says things about global warming that don't hold up in science. We've got another one in Montana, okay? Steve Running. I don't care if the media says what I say. He's a fake. He's a fraud, okay? He says, he goes to people, and I heard his lecture a little over a year ago. I couldn't believe it when I first heard it. I'll go into it here in more detail, but he went through the whole thing and says, here's why there's global warming. Well, he was totally wrong, but he got a Nobel Peace Prize. Hey, that's pretty good. Hey, here's something that not all of us know. There are two kinds of Nobel Prizes. There's a real science prize out of Sweden. And if you get that one, you've achieved something in science, okay? In physics, chemistry, that kind of thing. There is a peace prize from Norway that is political. Has nothing to do with achievement in science. Zip. I mean, we got corrupt terrorists, communist dictators. Hey, even Barack Obama, the great scientist, he got it. You just heard his speech. Well, okay, here's the fellow, Steve Running. And this is an example. Okay, I'm not after just one guy. We have these people loaded now in our universities because of the way they split out this Peace Prize. Hey, how come people think there's another argument? He says it's case closed. That's what he said. Well, hey, here's something else. He's not a physicist. He's an ecologist. I'm a physicist. I don't practice law. I don't practice medicine. I don't try to be a farmer because I don't know anything about those fields. When somebody else comes in outside of physics and tells you global warming is true, that is climate malpractice, and it should not be done. Here's a fellow friend of mine, John Christie. Well, he was on that IPCC committee too, and he got a chance to get his piece of the Nobel Peace Prize. John Christie happens to be an honest guy. He says, I can't accept this. He says, to accept that means I have to go along with what you guys are saying. So he rejected it. There are honest people out there, and there are good people, but you've got to do it. Thousands of scientists disagree with the IPCC. Okay, the letter to the United Nations of 101 scientists. There's the Manhattan Declaration. There's the Senate Minority Report that Senator Onofre did. The letter to Japan Science Society. You know, it's not happening. American Physical Society. I'm one of the signers on the American Physical Society. I started out with about 60 people. It's now over 200. They're all physicists. They must be. And they must be members of the American Physical Society. So that's in there. By the way, among them is a Nobel Prize winner in physics, a real physicist, and he says global warming is a fraud. Let our German scientists come out. Indian scientists, that was more recent. And by the way, the guy that heads the IPCC is Dr. Perucci. He's not a climate scientist. He's a railroad engineer of all things, and he's upset now at the Indian science group because they didn't agree with him. Climate scientist conclusions. Here's just a real, pick them out. I mean, they've said a lot of things. They say these IPCC reports, some report, they do not represent the views of the scientists. That's the real scientists. The changes in glaciers, sea level, these things about species, they're not evidence of abnormal climate change. There's nothing abnormal here. Climate models cannot predict climate. The global warming hypothesis is invalid. There's no basis to cut carbon dioxide emissions. Look, none. And look at what's in our society already. Attempts to reduce it are a tragic misallocation of resources. And they've studied this. There's some good economists that are in this thing too. We need low-cost, reliable energy to adapt to natural climate change. And what is our government doing right now? They're trying to restrict our low-cost energy, trying to lock up our energy resources, trying to stop us from using coal, etc. 4 pillars of global warming, as I call them. Essentially, if someone is going to say global warming is true, they must show 4 key things. And by the way, they can't do anything. They got to show the temperature record is somehow scary today. In other words, higher than in the past. Same with carbon dioxide. They got to say, oh, it's got to be really higher today than it was in the past. It's some scary thing. They got to show the physics that they're using is correct. By the way, it ain't correct. They have to show that the models actually are valid and can work inside, which means let people see the insides and make sure and see how they work, do proper tests and all that. They can't do it. One failure knocks out the whole hypothesis. And it's been knocked out for quite a while, but our university is still teaching this thing. The temperature data at this climate research unit, they changed the data, as we found out. They did these certain adjustments to the raw data, and the adjustments were made so it lowered the temperature in the past and it raised the temperature in the future, or the more present, to make it look like there was global warming. And then when another friend of mine, Dr. Roger Pilkey at Colorado State University, about a month or so ago, he asked the group, he says, well, can I have your real raw data? I want to see what happened to it. They said, well, we don't have it anymore. He says, what? You don't have it anymore? No, we deleted it. They deleted the public paid for raw data of the temperatures that they had been using. I mean, this is the world center for this stuff. Why they delete it? Well, it's in the emails. Because they didn't want the public to see it. They didn't want the other scientists to see it because they knew it would blow their cover. They did things that tricked is their word. They had a trick where they said, oh, the temperature's declined in the last 10 years. They got to hide this decline some way, so they've figured a way to do that. Here's a real good proximate temperature. We had in here, this goes back till minus 1,000. We had some very warm times back in the Roman times. We had a warm period called the medieval climate optimum, okay? Or the warm period. And then we had the Ice Age, about 1600. We're now coming out of the little Ice Age. It's perfectly natural. And way back in 1600, we didn't drive SUVs to have carbon dioxide bring us out of that little Ice Age. Something unnatural is happening. Even the IPCC had it in their 1995 report. You see that medieval warm period goes up. It's warmer then than it is now, right? Doesn't look scary. We find in their emails that they're emailing each other, we got to get rid of this medieval warm period. It's not doing our agenda any good here. So they did a whole bunch of fancy statistical stuff, which turned out to be absolute garbage, and they generated this thing. Ignore all these things, but you see that little red wiggly line, and then it starts coming up towards the end. When I went to Glacier Park last summer, and I go in there, and I heard the co-eds that are talking, giving the speech to the visitors. And they talk about, they said to the visitors, they say, what's Glacier Park about? Oh, glaciers. And what are the glaciers doing? They're melting. And why are they melting? Hint, hint, because we're driving SUVs, right? We've got to stop all this. And she says, we're activists. We're going to stop it. Afterwards, I caught some of them. I said, what do you mean by that? And I bug out, and they say, because they've been brainwashed by their professors at the university. And they say, yeah, it's getting hotter now than it's ever been. The carbon dioxide is going up now than we've had for thousands and thousands of years. We're heading into a real danger. The Earth is going to overheat if we don't do something about it. I mean, they're panicked. This is terrible. Well, okay, they got rid of it. It's totally fabricated data. Another guy, McIntyre, came through, a Canadian businessman that had in his business a very good statistician. He went through and he got this Michael Mann stuff that they did. Michael Mann's one of the conspirators, the bad guys. Went through and he says, the statistics is garbage. He says, I could take the numbers from a phone book and put them into this guy's statistics, and I'll generate the hockey stick curve. He published that thing in 2003. When Dr. Running of our university, a typical professor, gave his talk, he showed the hockey stick. And he said, this is what's happening to everybody. And there were a lot of students in the crowd. Well, a good study going through a whole different mechanism shows indeed that medieval warm period is really there. Hasn't gone away. It's confirmed also by 750 scientists, foreign institutions, et cetera, et cetera. We know it was there. There's a data conspiracy. It's not just this climate research unit, but their emails go over when they say, they're saying, hey, Jones from the CRU says, we're getting requests for information. We don't want to get this information out. We're kind of can't go beyond our Freedom of Information Act anymore. And he's talking to people in NOAA and NASA. He says, we got to coordinate when we delete the data and when we delete the emails that we don't want anybody to see. Whoa, these guys are caught in the biggest conspiracy and fraud.